Well, hello and welcome to a video that I've been meaning to do for actually quite a while now, and that is tour the Brinkley Model I series. However, you're gonna have to bear with me in this video only simply because we are actually standing in perhaps the most high traffic area. This is one of the set of doors here behind me. But what we're going to do is we're going to go around the Brinkley. We're going to do a GREYWOLF perspective video here. So we're going to be looking at the features and design decisions that Brinkley has done that I think other brands should really look closely at, because they're doing a lot of things right, but at the same time, yeah, you're good. More traffic. So, not to mention, Brinkley's are in many senses the star of the show again this year. They are the new kid on the block. They're the rising star, and like I said, they're doing a lot of things right. So this is a popular area. I'm going to jump in here first. This is going to go one take styles. Let's see. I apologize for any shaking. So up in here, first thing you're going to notice is a Nautilus system. So I've been on this rant for at least a year now as a Winnebago Micro Mini owner, because we direly need this. And the reason is this is just a great water management system to begin with, but it also has that siphon functionality. So again, in theory, you could throw a hose off the side of a bridge while you're driving up a mountain pass and suck up some fresh glacial water. But more practically speaking is if you had a water tote and you're boondocking for extended periods of time, then what you can do is you can just fill up your water caddy and then park it right next to it and then just siphon into the trailer. So then that way you're not actually worried about, standing next to your trailer and like holding a 30 liter and just gravity feeding into it. So bringing you in here a little bit closer, we can see that this is actually the Nautilus P4 system. There are multiple different versions of this, but generally speaking, they all have kind of the same functionality. What you can do here is you can run, if you have city water hookups, you can run your permanent hookups right up and in, and then that way you can just close down the exterior door panel and lock this all up at night and yet still have your city water hookups. And it's nice to see that Brinkley is including brass fittings in here. These could just as easily be plastic, but brass is more expensive, but it's going to be a lot more durable and less likely for cross-threading and just having issues on the road. Of course, Brinkley also has this, I think, industry first, or at least I've come to associate this feature with Brinkley, where it has the retractable water cord. In Western Canada, a lot of the parks either don't have or have had their water cables stolen. And so having this built into and retracting, that means you don't have to have like a big tote or bin somewhere. Like I've got one of my big clear bins that just sits in this area that keeps all my freshwater accoutrement. What's also interesting is Brinkley has chosen to include the stabilizer buttons in this area. Now, I say it's interesting because there's an inherent advantage, because when you're not on the outside, it's less subject to the elements and thus corrosion. I would actually like to see some labelings here, because I did ask one of the salespersons and they were telling me that this is, unfortunately, is not left and right, it's front and rear. So, if you bought the product, you would certainly know that, but I got excited here for a minute thinking that another brand has started to do what Winnebago's been doing on their Micro Mini and FLX line for years now, I think, which is an amazing feature. We also have a plug-in a light, nice utility light down here. So this is just, basic stuff, but it's often overlooked. In fact, when I pivot you around here to the left, a very big full-length LED light. Now, this is your traditional LED light where you can see each individual LED, but as we'll see when we work our way around the trailer, that what Brinkley is actually doing moving through into 2025 is a cob style. It's a COB style LED light, so it's one solid LED strip as opposed to having these individual hotspots. Now, this is just a utility bay, but that's a no-cost option, let's say, no cost upgrade from Brinkley's perspective, where they can add something that is a bit more contemporary in styling at no cost. If you're a manufacturer and the name of the game is building like the best quality trailers and best quality products, and you're not trying to participate in that race to the bottom, then adding felt on the inside makes a lot of sense, because inherently you're going to have, camp chairs and pokey things and, fire roasting sticks and all that stuff. And this is going to stand up a lot more than just if you had your standard wall covering, which is what we have in our pass-through. Down at the bottom, we can also see that we have that penny style floor down here. So compared to your standard laminate that you'll find throughout the trailer, this is going to be a lot more durable. So when you're throwing sports equipment or whatever else you want in here, then this is going to stand up to it. And the fact that, this is unique again to just this compartment goes to show that they understand the difference in how spaces are being utilized. Lastly, before we move on, at the risk of this segment getting a bit long-winded, this is where they've chosen to mount their solar charge controller, which is super, super nice because not only is it going to be close to the batteries, which presumably are behind this compartment here, but also it's very accessible and easily mounted and not on the ground, Winnebago, where, you know, it can inherently will get knocked. This is something you need access to from a maintenance and utility perspective, not something that you need to be regularly testing. Just move it up out the way. And then last but not least, we also have this. I do wish my Winnebago had this, and this is aluminum as opposed to what quite frankly feels like a very soft wood in the Micro Mini. And having this aluminum substructure, it's likely not structural, but you could actually manufacture the trailer in such a way that this is actually tying in some torsional rigidity into the product. So Nautilus, nice water station, built-in hose reel, nicely furnished pass-through. Again, Brinkley, they're doing all the right things. Oh, and how can we forget? 1-inch slam latch door, of course. Now, we actually don't have to go very far to see the next thing that Brinkley's doing really, really well that honestly, I actually didn't even know this product existed before I was looking at the Brinkley. This is the Demco Easy Latch. So comes in a couple versions. This one has the polycarbonate handle on here. It also has a metal handle. Honestly, I'm perfectly fine with the polycarbonate handle. What this does is when you're hooking up your trailer, you just simply need to lower your jack down onto your ball, and then it will automatically couple to it. And then you just can use any standard hitch lock coupler to secure it prior to going down the road. So I know from experience that traditional, metal lever that kicks up and slides back and then has to slide forward, all of that hassle. In fact, sometimes, it'll jam in there. So I take my weight distribution bar and I knock it forward to, pop it out. None of that should be with this Demco. So again, just drop it down. You leave the latch right where it is. There's like a little piston that rides up and then it will automatically close. And then, when it comes to unhook, you just flip up and go about your way. So, it's small features like this, but a lot of small features will add up to really big benefits from like a usability perspective. And then even just having like little chain hooks, it's nice to see. This is likely a byproduct of the actual frame manufacturing. Yeah, there's ways around it, but yeah, it's just the only thing I'm not seeing here that I would actually really like to see is a 7-pin holder. The reason for that is if you live anywhere where there's any weather, then these can and will corrode out. So having that little holder on the side, I would like to see that. I don't see one on here. So yeah, let's continue the way around. Now I'm taking a step back here because one thing that Brinkley does, I think, better than anybody else in the industry is the accent lighting on the front of their products. They've got such a unique visual signature to them. They're this nice daytime white, and actually if we get up close, you can see this is one of the newer Cobb style LEDs. I'm not sure if the camera's going to focus on that for you or not, but you see that you don't have those hot spots like you did on the LEDs down below. Now, on this Model I, again, we're not getting into, on a GREYWOLF perspective, this specific trailer review. That would be a video titled whatever this trailer's name is. We're just looking again at the features and benefits that Brinkley's doing. So in an off-grid, off-road situation, a front window is actually probably not what you want to do just from rocks getting kicked up from passing vehicles or approaching vehicles. But yeah, still nice to see. All right, we've made our way down around to the other side of the pass-through, and I see a lot of pros and a couple of cons. I actually want to start with the cons, and that is not having these electronics enclosed away, only simply just because there's a lot of current going from that red post over to that black post, and if you happen to stick, a hiking pole that's conductive in here, well, yeah, not good. So I would like to see all of that enclosed. But on the positive side, every trailer is going to come with one of these arms for, I believe, the manual override of either your slides or your leveling feet or both. But no one ever just includes these rings. How much does this cost? I mean, it's got to be pennies on the dollar, right? But it just gives you a place for it to put it because, when you're touring trailers, like brand new, you'll just see a lot of this accoutrement just sort of like thrown down and around and just laying there. So yeah, a place for everything and everything in its place, or mise en place, as the French would say. Moving around though onto the campside, this is really interesting. So lots going on here and I'll try to do my best. There is a 12-volt power switch, there is your solar disconnect switch, and then there's a total disconnect. This is interesting because if you recently saw one of my shorts, I was talking about how if you want to charge your batteries on the Micro Mini FLX, you actually need to leave the battery turned on, which thus need to leave the power to the trailer turned on. Now, that's not bad if you want to leave things in the refrigerator, but it's also not good if you forget a light on, which, ask me how I know. So what this will actually do is you can turn off the power except for the refrigerator, solar jacks, etc. This is stuff that you would use between trips or hooking up and going from trips, and you can turn that off. But it will still allow the solar to charge your onboard batteries, versus this will disconnect everything. And I know solar will send a current, so maybe you're doing some maintenance, but you still want to use your trailer or something to that effect. Down here we have our cap lights, and quite frankly, I think this, yeah, that's your pass-through light. I'd rather see the cap light be on the interior of the trailer versus the exterior, but that's my personal preference. This looks to be, yeah, that's your inverter readout. Again, I'd rather see this integrated into a central command. Campside power, sure, why not? We're right next to the fun garage where all the toys and stuff are kept, so maybe you want to run a little air compressor to fill up the inflatables or whatever that looks like. But this, check this out. So on the Winnebago Micro Mini FLX that we have a campside cold, but we don't have campside hot. And so I've actually personally thought about just deleting that cold from like a freezing perspective. I haven't used it. I know though, just because I haven't used it, other people might. But personally speaking, when it comes to washing off the dog before he goes into the trailer or a bike, it's nice to have some warm water, right? You know, you don't want to rinse off Fido with, freezing cold water. He won't be happy about that. So having some warm water, even if you just came back from the beach, maybe you don't want to walk around into the bushes where you've jammed the back of the trailer where the outside shower is most likely located. Maybe you just want to sit and rinse off your feet. So really nice to see. And then of course down below, you can just go and run that cord out. So if you want to preset a determined temperature and just leave this on, then you can just close down at the end of the day and keep that going. And then again, it's this chuck quick style connect, where, for example, on the exterior shower of the Micro Minis, that's a fixed cord, so you're stuck with whatever plastic handle business comes with it, and you can't do anything else with it. So yeah, lots to talk about, obviously, in such a short little area, but these are all really important features that once you get using the product, you will absolutely see the value in. So if you are even in the slightest an automotive enthusiast, then you're going to appreciate a really nice set of wheels. These, I don't believe, are exclusive to Brinkley, although Brinkley has invested and got this nice cap on here. This is gorgeous. This matte finish or a semi-satin, that sort of thing. The style of the wheel very much it fits with the quality and the execution and maybe even the price point, let's be honest, with this product. But it's so nice to see that it's actually like not your bargain basement El Cheapo, same as everybody else on the market has. In fact, I'm looking at the Model Z behind you, and those wheels are even one step up again. Also, brand name tires, Hankook, and appropriate tires for the use case scenario, right? So on our Winnebago, we have the Goodyear Wranglers, which, very nice off-road studdable tire. This is going to be a nice on-road, low rolling resistance style tire, but not your no-name El Cheapo, where there's just, let's be honest, a much higher probability of it exploding and taking off the side of your trailer while it does so. So yeah, very nice to see. Yeah, good wheel and tire combination. It's the little things, but they add up. All right, we're back in handheld mode, but you might have actually seen behind me in that previous segment, these lights. Let me actually get you right down low here. So what Brinkley has done is, again, it's the small things, but it's so good. These are accent ambient lights underneath your camp trailer, and both on the camp and non-camp side. So why is that cool? Well, you're still going to have your standard awning light up top, which actually looking at it is that new Cobb style LED, which is not turned on at the moment. But what you can do is when you're at camp, instead of having it rain down light from above, maybe you just want to sit out at the campfire, enjoy yourself, but not walk and step in a gopher hole on your way back to the trailer, then you can turn on the lights down below, and that will just kind of illuminate the area. You're not going to stub your toe. You know, it's going to illuminate, sorry, the your campsite, and not again be like a scene light. Now, scene lights have their time and place. If you're backing into a campsite in pitch black and you're deep in the woods or whatever, scene lights are amazing for that. But this is just a nice little campsite feature. Doesn't cost that much money, but it really has a great value from a usability perspective. And honestly, it's fairly difficult to come in after the fact and retrofit it. It's easy to install. It's the switch and wiring in that side of the electrics that is more annoying. It's certainly possible, and you can definitely do that. And I've actually considered doing that myself, but yeah, is it worth it? That's a question up to you. So I'm going to try not to take my head off here on this pencil hook above me, but we've come around the back of the Model I. Now, interestingly, I don't know if this is an early production unit or if they've actually changed this, but not only do you have the accessory, the 2-inch accessory receiver back here, which we know we're making great utilization of with a hitch mounted bike rack that we can mount the bikes back here during transit, and then we can transfer that to the tow vehicle once we're at the campsite. But I'm not actually seeing that 4-pin connector down here. So we did add that on. That video may or may not actually be out, so here, sneak preview, teaser, whatever. But yeah, I would like to see moving forward that there is that 4-pin connector. So if you do have something that might obstruct the taillights, which is a real very possibility, like bike tires or, you know, generator caddy or whatever that looks like, having the ability to add auxiliary stop turn taillights back here, super important. So I've seen it on all the fifth wheel products, but I was impressed to see that on another conventional tow product by Brinkley, because, you know, typically on a fifth wheel, you might be considering doing some legal towing of a trailer behind a trailer, where you wouldn't actually do that behind a conventional tow, but adding that on there, I thought was really forward thinking. So I'm going to have a chat with the sales rep, and you know what, maybe I'll put it at the bottom of the screen if I get an answer for you what the situation is for that moving forward. But it's not here. I'd like to see it come back. Come on, Brinkley. So I feel like I'm not in an area that the show organizers anticipated me going in. We've got our hot water system here, but okay, that is interesting. So it looks like on this particular product, what Brinkley has done is they've actually just omitted the rear exterior shower. So seeing that hot and cold in that pass-through is likely where they've oriented that. Honestly, I'm not upset about it, quite frankly, because I like to jam the back of my trailer in as close to the bushes to give as much, you know, possible camp space on the campsite of the trailer as we can. But I will admit, if you're washing off a bike and you're going to be using a lot of water for that, it will create quite the soupy, muddy mess down in that area. And so it might be nice to have that auxiliary hookup in an area where if you're going to kind of flood your campsite out, or if you're going to create a flood, it would be nice to not flood your campsite out. So yeah, that's, you know, it is what it is. And then of course, just for the sake of conversation, we can see underneath those accessory lights again. They've also included a nice, you know, tube here. Now I have seen on Brinkley's past where the actual gates for the tanks are electronically controlled from the front, and it seems like these are not. So there are your tank pulls. Now they do actually go up into the enclosed underbelly, but you know, I think, again, all things being equal, right? If it's a camper trailer product that is not explicitly going out with the idea of using it in inclement, you know, i.e. cold conditions, then fine, I'm perfectly accepting to that. If it's an off-grid off-road product where you might want to take it out to your local ski hill, or maybe you're doing a big ski trip around the you know, Pacific Northwest and you're base camping in the parking lot, well, all of the slush and whatever wet snow that you're driving through that's going to get flicked up, that's going to cake back here on your tank control and may actually prevent you from opening it and functioning, where having an electronically controllable, where that electronic device is up in that heated enclosed area, assuming it's heated, Winnebago, is, yeah, that's going to be, you know, better in those situations. So it's not a criticism per se, but it is a bit disappointing knowing that other Brinkley products had that electronically controlled valve system. So yeah, let's keep going. Okay, so I was actually able to get clarification on some of the features that we're seeing, or I'm used to seeing on those other Brinkley products. May not be found here, including those electronic tank valve controls and that 4-pin at the back. But I did encourage him, for the little added cost, it would be really good if there is the potential of obstruction of brake lights and people want to run the accessories. I figure if you're going to put the accessory receiver on there, then yeah, put the plug, because it's, if you're encouraging people to put stuff in the back and then, you know, potentially creating that scenario, then yeah, let's see some solutions. Oh, I've really got myself stuck in here. All right, we're gonna try to squeeze out somewhere. I think backtrack. We're gonna backtrack. All right, well, this is one of those if you know situations. So here we have the solid step. Now this happens to be a MORryde product, I think. Yeah, the MORryde step above. Different strokes for different folks in terms of what you're looking for, but there is a button down here, if you can see that. So this is actually what's going to control the actual telescoping legs down at the bottom. So it's perfectly fine to leave these where they are. But if and when you get to a campsite where maybe there's some uneven ground left to right, or even side to side where you might need to extend it more, instead of reaching for plastic blocks or whatever, or rubber, which is my personal preference, then you can just simply press this button and that will telescope in or out to a certain extent to help adjust and stabilize those stairs left and right. Credit where credit is due. I like that MORryde has this, but I would actually like to see a bit more of a dedicated button. Again, this is the sort of stuff that I'm talking about when we get into off-grid off-road. The base product is here, but in an off-grid off-road situation, I guess just off-road, not off-grid. In an off-road situation, you're much more likely to need to use this on a more frequent basis. Whereas, you know, if you're in a camp, then okay, fine, we'll just stick this little tab in here, which, you know, compared to some of the Lippert solid steps is actually, you know, this is a much easier accessible way. But Lippert, they've got, I think it's like a Gen 4 or something like that, and there's an exterior, you know, accessible like handle system, which I'll admit is a bit better than this. So yeah, it'd be cool if MORryde could do that, because I think there's still going to be clearance, you know, up on the door frame side of things. But yeah, good to see solid steps that are adjustable and easily adjustable on a trailer. Now, if you'd asked me before last year, this is something I would have been really vocally opposed to. We're seeing a lot of manufacturers go this way, where they're actually removing the skylight from the bathroom. The reason why I say that that's, my opinion may have changed, is I've actually installed in the Winnebago a hook here in the back, because that skylight will allow so much heat into the trailer that it actually creates a bit of a drier effect. So what I was doing was I was closing the slider door, but I was opening oh, use your words, Colin. I was opening the roof vent, and it was letting in such amount of heat that it was actually successfully drying my clothes in less than a day. So removing this does mean that there are fewer opportunities for water ingress in the trailer, but adding this panel here still helps you preserve headroom if you're taller. So yeah, this is really, I'm okay with it, provided that of course you're doing something what Brinkley is doing back here with adding in this accessory ambient lighting back in the back. And again, that's that new COB or Cobb style LED in the back. Also, point of personal preference, I absolutely love this shower enclosure. It's made by a brand called Encore, it looks like. I've never seen any other manufacturer use it. It has this like sort of it reminds me of like what you'd see the sand under the ocean, you know, in like a tidal area where, you know, it kind of has those ripples. It's got like a nautical feel to it, but it's so nice, and it's an all one piece enclosure. So whereas other manufacturers are using like panels and then like adding caulking, you know, that's definitely more of a price point. But yeah, so fewer points of leaking. So again, if it maintains the functionality but you improve longevity, I think that's a pretty reasonable trade-off. Okay, apparently I'm not done with the shower tour, because while this big, you know, shower head is all nice and fancy and whatnot, gosh, this is so obvious, and yet so few manufacturers actually include it from factory. That's a place to put your stuff where it's not going to bounce out. And again, if you know, you know, but having the ability to actually just sit down and wash your feet off with the hose, especially if you're trying to actively conserve water, is actually kind of a nice feature. So again, that's all integrated in here. I've seen different solutions with, you know, teak benching and that sort of thing that you can always add after the fact. But yeah. All right, you join me down here on the floor in the bathroom because yet again, here's something that Brinkley is doing that I've never seen any other manufacturers do, but I'm actually going to be installing on the Winnebago because it's needed. And what this is a cold air exchange duct. So because we're in the rear of the trailer where two of the walls are exterior walls, the area underneath your shower can and is subject to freezing in those cold, you know, freezing temperatures. So what this will do is it will allow that cold air to escape, so you don't have a cold air zone where it, you know, could potentially freeze your plumbing, but it will also allow passively, at least in this application, hot air in. There is a little bit of a nod and a wink in there because I actually do have an idea where this could be used as part of the central air circulation, but not on this particular product. Anyways, great to see. Well done, Brinkley. So something I've said before in the past is that style is free, and that may or may not be entirely accurate, but if you have the opportunity and you're going to install a medicine cabinet or a mirror in your washroom, why wouldn't you take that as an opportunity to find something that looks as nice and as modern and contemporary as this does? From a manufacturing perspective, you're spending money either way, so if a little bit more has to get passed along to the consumer, but it has this kind of a visual impact, take my money. Now, I've sort of backed my way over into another convenient area because, of course, this is something that is widely documented, but it's also from a consumer's perspective, they're doing the dovetail drawers. So let's see if I can get this to focus there. But this is just going to be much more robust and have better longevity, because when you're driving down the road, especially in like an off-road application, they kind of describe these as earthquakes on wheels, and you can see little kind of tacks, for securing wood. That might be fine in a house, but when your house is on wheels, then yeah, that's a bit of a different situation for sure. So dovetail drawers, it might be an added manufacturing cost, but that's a cost I'm willing to invest in for the longevity of the product. And then just as a personal preference, I know that we've seen a big trend in 2025 and even last year in 2024, a lot of trailers and products going towards a two burner and like a longitudinal two burner. So last year, again, I'd have to sit down and actually tally up how many days I did in the product, but on multiple occasions, I was using two burners. So if I was cooking pasta, I'd have the noodles, and then I would have whatever, my sauce or stir fry kind of thing on the side. This is really good if you, again, have kids and you want to do like a griddle and do pancakes or bacon or eggs or all the things. So as somebody who likes to cook and cooks frequently in their trailer because we're camping in inclement conditions, then yeah, I personally really like to see the three burner stove here. And not to mention, like in the Winnebago, we don't have an oven underneath. We have a convection oven microwave, which looks to be, yep, convection bake. So going with this countertop style stove is actually really nice because you're not losing a huge amount of counter depth underneath. And it's, if anything, you kind of get like a little bit more sort of prep space around it. So yeah, this is a trend I can get behind, which is countertop mounted stoves and not going with the two burners. So taking a look above me, I hope I can catch this on camera just fine. We have the full, I think this is 10-inch fan. Now this appears to be a unidirectional product, but actually, let's see. I think underneath this is going to be an exhaust fan, although I'm not actually sure if it's ducted. Is it ducted? Might just be a carbon filter. Moisture management, right? More and more brands are moving away from having traditional wood products in their trailers, but you're still going to always find it in the kitchen, and that's where you're boiling pots of water. So, cups or liters or whatever freedom measurement you want, you're putting that water vapor up into the air. So they have situated this fan right over the cooking surface, so they may be looking to this fan to serve that double duty. I don't like that if that's the case. And the only reason being is there's a fan here. No, I'm not seeing a fan setting on the microwave. The problem is when you're cooking, it's not just water vapor, it's also oil droplets. And so if it's sucking it up, and those oil droplets are often suspended in that water vapor, So if it's getting sucked up, then you can and will be pulling, a lot of the oil up around here, whereas traditionally in, residential settings, it would be pulling it up into an exhaust fan, catching in that charcoal filter and or exhausting out the side of your home. So yeah, apparently that's turned into a bit of a pet peeve. But the point was, this is perfectly acceptable if you don't have other issues that you may be dealing with. So in the Winnebago, where we've got that window right behind the cooking area, which is awesome, I love it. What we kind of want in that situation is, instead of pulling that moisture into the trailer and up and out, we'd actually want a reversible fan to create a positive pressure inside to push that air out that window. So in 99% of the applications, I think this style fan is more than adequate, because the amount of money that you'll spend and just time, pulling up your lap sealant, changing out screws and hardware and tying it in, etc. If that's not stuff you want to do, or if you're not comfortable getting up onto your roof, let alone crawling around while you're up there, then yeah, having this done. I know this is not going to be a particularly expensive fan because it just has the standard roof opening, but if you get up into like the max air where it's covered, where you can use them in raining conditions, i.e. Pacific Northwest, Alaska, British Columbia, all on the coastal environments, then having that style roof vent is, that's where you're going to want to spend your money. So if you're in those areas, or you like to do that type of recreating, then yeah, or maybe Florida, I don't know, you guys get hurricanes and stuff. Point being, fans. All right, so I'm finally going to stop talking about the Model I. Hopefully you managed to get a few good pieces of information that might help you if you're shopping for either this particular product, or if you're looking at cross-shopping other products. Again, Brinkley's just doing so much right when it comes to their products, whether that's conventional tow, I series, the Model Z Air, fifth wheels, whatever it is. It's a brand to really look at, because just chatting for a couple of seconds while I had them with the Western sales rep here, Brinkley really does seem like they're trying to build a good product first, followed by price point second. So price point is often going to be a byproduct of features and quality. So at the end of the day, the market's going to have all different types of products and options, and some will have good things here and poor things there, etc. But as is with these GREYWOLF perspective videos, we're not looking at the trailer, not looking at the floor plan, we're just looking at cool things done right. So in the meanwhile, thank you very much for watching. If you've made it this far, please consider subscribing, because we've got plenty of off-grid, off-road, cool projects, modifying. And again, the theme of 2025 is it's time to accessorize. So yeah, be sure to stick around. Again, thank you very much for watching. I sincerely do appreciate it. You take care, and bye for now.